Hi guys, Jack Scarf here, Director of Scarf Property Solutions. Hope you've had a great week and have had a really good weekend to boot. So at the moment, as a mortgage broker or as a customer looking to buy a property, something that is rife, despite house prices still being the same, and Rightmove showing 98% of people are buying at full market value. So if it's on 150,000, the customers are buying it for 150,000. Down valuations are all over the place, and there's surveyors from all different firms going out, and rather than the property being valued at what it should be, it's actually being valued at less. So first of all, what is a down valuation? Kind of just touched on it there, but if you're looking to buy a property, let's say for £100,000, and the surveyor from the mortgage lender goes out to see if it's adequate security for them, so checking there's no subsidence, if they need to repossess the house, that it's definitely worth what they're saying it's worth. Surveyor goes out and checks, and rather than saying, yep, we agree, it's worth £100,000, they actually say, oh no, this one's only worth £90,000. That is a down valuation. So a valuation that's less than actually what the offer that you put in was. So now we've cleared up what it is. Why is it happening? While surveyors are supposed to be going out and doing surveys and using comparables for the property you're buying based on pre-COVID, because let's face it, there's not been loads and loads of transactions while we were in lockdown, so there's not loads of comparables there anyway. They're actually, it seems like, doing two things. One is, if a property is worth between 110,000 and 90,000, even if the customer's buying it for 110, they seem to be putting the value on of 90, so they're erring on the side of caution. And some, it seems, are even, I'm not going to say anything that's libelous, but maybe just being a little bit careful. So while house prices haven't dropped yet, they may be expecting that they will do in the future. So they're just putting a value on that's a little bit lower than what the market actually dictates right now. And this is affecting lots and lots of customers being able to buy their house. So if this is happening to you, just wanted to give you some options on what you can do if it has actually happened. So the first of which is, legally, unless you've exchanged contracts, you're not liable for that property anyway. So you don't actually have to go through with the purchase. You could just pull out. Now for me, as a solution finder, that's not very exciting, and also it'd be a pretty short video. So actually, I'll go through some of the other alternatives as well. The first of which, it makes common sense, would be to actually negotiate with the vendor. And the reason I'm explaining this is some people might think, actually, once you put the offer in, firstly, I'm liable for it, secondly, it is what it is, there's no way around it. Well, actually, if you don't want to pull out and you're desperate to buy, it might be a dream home, or it might be a fantastic investment, then actually you can just speak to the vendor and say, look, I offered you 100,000, that's what it was on for, that's what we thought it was worth, but actually this qualified professional has said it's only worth 90, so I'm only willing to pay 90 because I don't want to pay over the odds for a property, which I think sounds fair when you phrase it like that. Now they can obviously turn around and say no, they can then negotiate and potentially look at 95 or somewhere in between, but I think that's certainly something to consider, is actually negotiating with the vendor and seeing what they say from there. Some of the time though, a valuation might be down valued because there's actually some works that need carrying out. So it might be £5,000 to £10,000 worth of work, and the survey will actually say, right now it's only worth 90,000, and we're not happy for you to buy this property because we don't think it's adequate security until these works have been done. So that's £10,000 worth of works, which would mean it's worth 100,000. At that point, another way around it might be to speak to the vendor again and say, look, we're happy to pay the 100,000 for it, but you need to get these works done. That the house is in your name, and the lender is saying to us that this doesn't fit standards, or meet regulations. They need it to be done. So if you can put that 10,000 in, we've already started the process now, we're happy to buy. If you can put the 10,000 in, get those works done, then we'll buy it at the 100,000 that we agreed previously. So there's a couple of ways that are plausible and ways that I've seen many, many times be very successful. There's one thing you can do that is actually a lot less successful, but shouldn't be, and should actually be what the right thing to do is, and that would be to challenge the survey that you've had. So you are well within your rights to challenge it. What the process is after that is, the mortgage lender will ask you, or your broker, but you're going to be the one that's doing it, I'm sure, is to get 3 comparables of the same property type in that area within the last 3 months. So that in itself is quite difficult. So if you're buying a 1-bedroom flat, you need, within normally a kind of a 5-mile radius, to be honest, you need at least 3 1-bedroom flats within that 5-mile radius to have sold within a 3-month period. And you need them all to have gone through the process and been at normal market value for this to help you. Same if it's, a 3-bed end of terrace, you'd need 3 end of terrace houses in the last 3 months in a 5-mile radius for this to be relevant. So that in itself is quite tricky. But let's say you can do that and you get 3 comparables and you send it over to the lender with an explanation of why you think it's actually worth more. They will then firstly put it back to the surveyor, who is a qualified professional, and he's not one to say, actually, yeah, I made a mistake, let's change our mind. Now they can, but it's very, very, very rare, to the point that I almost never do it unless the customer can get me 3 comparables and I look at it and the surveyor's been absolutely ludicrous. And even in those circumstances, it might not work, but it just feels like it's definitely the right thing to do. And the surveyor should see that. They don't always, but for me, in my heart, it's the right thing to do, so that I'll always do it and try and help the customer where I can. So once you've got that through, you've got the initial challenge to the surveyor. So you go to the surveyor, actually, here's 3 comparables, here's our story, we know it's worth more, we're going to challenge you on it. And they come back and say, yeah, I've looked at the evidence and no, I'm going to stick with what I thought. Your then next challenge to them would be to go to their line manager effectively, who would then say, he's a member of staff of mine, I'm pretty much going to back him unless this is horrendously wrong and he's got no evidence or nothing to compare this to. We're going to say no as well. And after that, goes to his line manager. So that's the 3-step process, which is pretty horrendous, pretty time consuming, pretty slow, pretty demoralising, and something that I don't do very often at all, if I'm honest, because it is just a waste of everyone's time. So it's possible, it can be done. Might be worth doing once, so you go through the experience and realise actually that the surveyors can be quite stubborn, and most of the time, in fairness, they're not doing it to be a pain to you. They're doing it to cover themselves, and they believe that is the true market value, and they will provide you with comparables that they've used as well. So it's very, very rare that they'll get it miles wrong. But at the moment, it just seems rife. So I feel like it's something that needs to be spoken about. And the final way around this, which if you can is probably the best way, to be honest, or it's a last resort, but the easiest way around it would be to just provide the additional money yourself. So I just want to give you a quick example of a customer of mine that this happened to recently. Buying a property for £100,000. In theory, they would have been putting down a 10% deposit. So it would have been £90,000 that they were borrowing, and they would have been putting up £10,000 themselves. The surveyor come back and said, actually, it's only worth £90,000. So while that's only 10,000, depending on the circumstance, that can be quite a big difference. And if you're looking at an investment property, that can hit your ROI massively. So in this scenario, the mortgage lender are only willing to work off, and I think this is really important to factor in, they're only willing to work off 90,000 as a value. So he then needs to put down 9,000 as a deposit, so still 90% loan to value, still got a 10% deposit, which is 9,000, and the mortgage company will give him 81. So because they're giving him 81, he's putting down 9, that's 90. Well, he's buying this property off the vendor for £100,000. So if the mortgage company's only working off 90, where's the other 10 come from? The other 10 has to come from the customer. So instead of putting down the 10,000 he was going to, when he was buying it at 100 with a 10% deposit, he's now got a property that's worth 90. He needs to put in 9 to satisfy the mortgage company and get the mortgage arranged with their agreement with a 10% deposit. And he needs to put in £10,000 cash on top of that to satisfy the vendor that he's buying from, because he's buying for £100,000 still. He tries to negotiate, oh, I think it's only worth 90 now, the qualified professional said so. No, I'm only going to sell it for £100,000. So you put in 9,000 to the mortgage company, which ultimately goes to the vendor anyway. Mortgage company puts in 81, so the vendor's got 90,000. He needs 10,000 more. The customer has to put in that extra 10,000, so he's actually stumping up 19,000. So a couple of things. One, might not even be possible for a lot of people to do that and find the extra cash. And two, as stated, it might have a massive impact on your return on investment. Or it might be, your safety fund if you're buying a residential property, or you wanted to do some works to the house. It might mean that you can't do those as well. So it is a way around it. If the money's not an issue, then that is a good way of doing it, and it's easy. The lender will already have signed off on the 90,000 in a lot of cases. So it just means that you tick that box, you pay the extra when you actually complete. But it's not always possible. So I thought I'd bring it to your attention. So there are a few ways that you can get around a down valuation. It's happening all the time at the moment, it appears. So a very topical video. I think it might be very helpful for you. If you're looking for investment properties and you actually see that there's been a down valuation taking place, you can then think actually, oh no, I don't know what to do now. You can think, can I challenge it? Can I speak to the vendor directly? Have I got the cash myself? Are there some works that need to be done to the property? Or do I just need to pull out of this particular investment? But before you do that, have a look at the solutions that are out there for you. So there's a little bit on down valuations. I hope you don't suffer it, but if you do, there's some solutions for you there. So thanks a lot for your time. Really appreciate that. Again, hope you're getting some value from these videos. And just in case the down valuation happens to you, you'll know the best way around it. So anything similar, anything property related, anything mortgage related, do subscribe and hit that notification bell, and you'll be informed before anyone else when a video has been made to you, so that you can get some value for you moving forward. So thanks a lot for your time. Have a great end to the weekend, and move strongly into next week. All the best. Take care.